All right, welcome everyone to another episode of Behind the Human. I'm your host, Mark Champagne, and my job is to unpack the stories and mental fitness practices of people living at the top of their game, personally and professionally. Today, we've got a real treat. We have Noel Buckley on the show, who founded Knolly Bikes, a highly respected mountain bike brand based in British Columbia, Canada. He has a background in physics from the University of British Columbia and worked as an engineering physicist for a decade before starting Knolly in 2006. Prior to Knolly, he worked in machine vision systems for industrial forestry applications and hydrogen hybrid power systems. God, I need a PhD just to have that conversation. This experience gave him insights into developing advanced products for harsh environments and real-world testing methods. As an avid mountain biker from Vancouver's North Shore riding scene, he's applied these principles to launch Knolly and design bikes optimized for aggressive riding. So cool. Such an interesting background. Welcome to the show. As of today, Noel, who are you? How would you describe who you are?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. And obviously, I think there's, could be going to any amount of detail here. In some ways, I'm, a middle-aged family man raising a kid and
nothing wrong with that.
Trying to live life. In other ways, I'm passionate about what we do with our business and being outdoors and designing innovative and high quality products and not to greenwash our company, but also maybe making a little bit of a statement environmentally as well. I think those that know our brand know that we've moved away from carbon mostly. But yeah, I would say I'm an enthusiast who's become a business owner. And with that becomes a whole bunch of caveats in terms of learning how to run a business. And we've created a brand really, which is to a large extent kind of against the mainstream of the industry, but has also developed a very loyal following because of the kind of innovative products we make. They're market leading in certain ways. We're best known for our suspension design, but also our geometries are really at the forefront of the industry. We've recently, in the last few years, moved into gravel as well and brought some really interesting designs into that market space that are now starting to become more mainstream, but when we launched our bikes, they were very, very progressive.
Yeah.
So we're just, as a person, I'm trying to balance all these challenges in terms of my life, my family, business, trying to stay innovative. I'm middle-aged now, so that I can't send it maybe the way I used to in my 20s and 30s. But
you're still out there from what I can see.
Still out there. Skiing, I grew up skiing, actually was my main sport. And I made a real effort the last decade to get back into skiing seriously. And like a lot of people now my age, got some challenges, especially with my knees. But on the flip side, my skiing is arguably technically the best it's ever been. So it's pretty cool to be able to grow still and improve at this age.
How did it all begin? Because from my understanding, before you actually started the brand as a business, you were actually building bikes for friends, kind of as a hobby and whatnot. Because your background seems far from, maybe not in the sense that what I know about Knolly now in terms of the quality and how you're creating bikes and whatnot, but it's not an immediate link, that you would assume someone outside of the bike world would be like, oh yeah, obviously that guy doing that stuff would be, he'd go and start a bike brand and take on some of the biggest brands in the world, right? How did it all happen?
For sure. And I think those that know the brand kind of know the history because it's pretty interesting. But I had two aspects of my background that helped get this started outside of my interest in riding. The first was when I was in university doing my degree, I had a job, a part-time job, and I was actually working in a machine shop for a few years. So I became pretty proficient in terms of materials and manufacturing, at least in the machining side of things. And then the second aspect is one of the jobs I had the first jobs I had after I finished my degree was the company made very high-end systems. And they were small, scrappy guys working in a world of much larger, more conservative companies. And they invented this little machine vision world. They invented some really radical and innovative technology at the time in the 1990s. And they also focused on uptime. And their biggest concern was ensuring not just the sophistication and performance of the product, but the reliability of their product. And that company really drilled into me how important it is for the user base to have products that not only perform at the level they expect them to, but can do it day in and day out. And that really formed the basis of maybe the characteristics of Knolly as a company. So that all came together. It started when I had a pretty bad accident riding. I've had a few of them over the years.
Yeah.
But I had a pretty bad accident riding where I broke my arm. And it required several surgeries to fix. So it really had me down for about 2 to 2.5 years. And in that time, I started putting all my very nascent engineering experience and early CAD design experience and manufacturing experience together and spent a 1.5 years kind of just playing with designs. And also, interestingly, at the time, I was filing patents for my day job. So I threw some patents together as well, filed a provisional patent.
Okay.
Which evolved into quite a network now of patents in the portfolio and starting to be, some of what's in our patents starting to be, used across the industry. So that was the start. And then that design, and then basically in 2003, 2004, I was like, well, let's see if we can build these bikes. So I built a handful of prototypes and friends test rode them. And then next thing I knew, I had orders for 3 or 4 dozen of them.
Wow.
Of course, they took much longer to build, and we were doing everything by hand locally. And every step was kind of like pulling teeth. And not only were they late, probably lost a bunch of money on it as well. Yeah. My wife was like, "What are you doing?" But that was a start. And then
you were still in the day job though at that point, right?
I was still in the day job.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
And then in 2006, 2007, the industry I was working in at that time was having a pretty hard time, and there was really the opportunity to move into a different field. And it's like, well, maybe there's something to this. Let's try. And that was the start of Knolly. So since then, it's been 15, 16, 17 years really of trying to learn the manufacturing world, trying to compete as a very scrappy company. We do have a little bit of friends and family money in the business, but really it's mostly bootstrap on myself. And we're very different than a lot of other brands where there's either a large company behind them or they have a strong equity partner behind them. And that has its pros and cons. We kind of dictate what we do, but it would always be nice to have stronger reserves behind you. But that's what we are. And that's really been the growth curve of the company is just trying to figure it out and evolve our products and understand the market space and build a loyal following and try to adapt our products as we've gained more and more experience to what our customers want. And I feel that our current generation of product is definitely the closest we've ever come to that for sure.
Oh, which would make sense, right? I mean, easier said than done, but it almost like every year, that passes, it should be becoming closer and closer. You probably never, like even just like self-development, like there's never an end destination. It's always this evolution. And if you're listening, right, and having those conversations and iterating and so forth, which is kind of part of the magic of the whole experience.
For sure. And that's only on the product side as well. I would be remiss not to talk about the company and our staff and our customers and part of being the business owner. And maybe this goes more to your whole mental part of it is learning how to deal with staff, where it's, mentoring staff and working with staff and getting the most out of them. And I think when you're small and everything's scrappy, it's easy to get a bit of a hot head.
Sure.
And learning how to let staff run and encourage them has been something I've been really working on a lot the last few years. And that's in particular because, to be honest, our industry was one of the most adversely affected during the pandemic. So there was a tremendous amount of stress around the office, really for going on 4.5 years now, where at the start we could sell anything we wanted, but we couldn't give customers delivery dates because we couldn't get consistent delivery dates for vendors, or something was always changing.
Mm.
And then the industry cycled into, after 2.5 to 3 years in a boom industry, it cycled into a pretty hard bust industry, which is currently trying to dig itself out of. But I have staff who've been through all of that, and it's really stressful for them.
Yeah.
And so Abby, of course, as well as the owner.
Well, just on that topic, what worked well for you going through that period? And frankly, still coming out of it, like, did you have any non-negotiable practices or rituals that help your mind, keep your mind clear and as healthy as possible?
I think
single malt Scotch. I know you're a Scotch drinker.
Yeah, we can definitely talk about whiskey. No, the funny thing is I jokingly refer to myself as an equal opportunity alcohol enthusiast.
Do share.
But I actually day to day drink very little, so I can go weeks without having alcohol. I do love whiskey in particular, and everything that goes along with it, culture wise, and the evolution of the industry. Even though it's also truly, to use an old expression, really jumped the shark the last 5 or 10 years, and I feel like it's about to hit the bust cycle, but we'll see. They've been able to sell, but we'll see what happens. But no, I think really the biggest challenge is just trying to keep, it sounds so simple, but trying to keep that positive mental attitude in it. And that's really difficult when staff are stressed and customers are stressed and vendors are frustrated, and you're in the middle of all that. And maybe your bank's breathing down your neck, and you're looking at how do I get from point A to point B when there's all these challenges in place. And certainly that's been, there's been a lot of that going on in our industry. Any industry that's been affected COVID, the outdoor industry in general, or even things like hot tubs, have all been through this, this boom cycle. Now they're in a very hard bust cycle.
Yeah.
And I think the first thing is you don't sacrifice your morals. And that's very hard to do. And a lot of people did. They were like, hey, I can make infinite money. I can jack my prices up to wherever I want to jack them up to.
Yeah.
And then when the bust cycle happened, they just did everything they could to liquidate. And that was maybe not the best overall for the market or for their resellers or maybe even for the customer. But, it's all short-sighted, short-term viewpoint. And we've always tried to take a bit of a mid-longer term. I think given where the business is at in the industry right now, like taking a really long-term view is very difficult. Like certainly when we do any 5-year plans right now. But we've always just held our head high and tried to be as honest and direct with our customers. And obviously we're in business to make a sale, so you want to close the sale. But on the flip side, I think we've just tried to be really straightforward and very direct with our customers and say, hey, here's what we can use, we can't do, here's our price, we haven't inflated our price. We're trying not to discount aggressively. So it's been a really fine line to walk, and taken a lot of just patience, I guess, like you hinted before.
Yeah.
While, still being on top of your financial metrics, run a business and all those things. And so it's been super challenging, to be honest.
What helped you to zoom out of the noise and the messiness in the moment to just kind of take that bird's eye view and, like you said, look a little bit, like, not jeopardize your morals and not be too short-sighted, and be able to be somewhat level-headed to the best as you can, of course, like everyone's human. And those are stressful times, but was there anything in particular that was helpful or grounding for you from a practical exercise or ritual for you? Like what did that look like? What's the routine look like?
Yeah, I'd love to say there was some awesome yoga pose where I could, align the chakras and come out clear-minded, 30 minutes later after having sat down in a lotus position for a while. But no, I think that's maybe for some people. For me, the biggest single learning thing, honestly, was to trust my staff and ensure that my staff are operating at the level I need them to. And so certainly everybody's had some ups and downs, but we've definitely got the best crew we've ever had in the business right now. And the most stressful part of that for the staff, of course, is looking after customers. The
Yeah.
most stressful part as the owner is managing the financial side. And having people that can kind of allow me to stay more at 10,000 feet as opposed to being at ground level. Like I have to get to ground level often. For sure, I think one of the things, certainly being an owner of a business and anybody who's in the CEO position, you don't want to be at ground level every day, but you need to be able to drill down on any topic.
Yeah.
And I think, and trust the information you have from people who provide that information. And if it seems weird, then investigate. But you want to try to stay at 10,000 feet or higher is to a large extent. You can't be out of touch, of course, and you can't just let things go along in the background. But the more ability I have to spend up there and kind of think about where I want the business to be in the midterm and maybe a few years out is beneficial because it's exciting. And that's where the excitement is in terms of the product side of it, or as even the business growth and the environment we work in and what the staff composition looks like and the products we're making. When you get dragged down and you're in micromanagement mode all the time, that is the soul sucking part of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that we have spent a lot of time there, a lot more time than I would have liked to spend there during COVID because it's required that. And we're still definitely not out of the woods. All bike brands are dealing with legacy issue and overstock or lack of stock and market dynamic shifting very quickly, inverse demographic sales profiles, all sorts of stuff like that. But I think just trying to look at, hold our head high and make sure we treat our customers with respect and make sure we treat our vendors as, as respectful as we can and just move forwards and not complain about things in the past. That's probably the single biggest one is to try to just move past the past and look forward.
What pays the bills over on this side is I work with a lot of corporate teams in different industries to bring in mental fitness practices and whatnot. And that is the number one topic that I'm requested to come in and help with around where it's almost like there's a lot of emotional and mental debt from the last 2 to 3 years, which is valid, but it's like, it's time we got to move forward. How can we just, go and this is my job, obviously, to bring in some rituals and some practices just to help release some of that and then equip people with tools that work well for them. And in some cases, that's if you're an avid mountain biker, are you getting on your bike? Make sure that's built into your schedule. I know for me, early morning rides once or twice a week before the day starts and seeing the sun coming through the trees. Like that's my meditation. There's nothing that lights me up more and feel like you start the day like I've already won, in a way. Like it's just so, but that's for me. I mean, not everyone would enjoy that, but just because it doesn't rule out all of physical exercise or all of mental fitness exercise, right? So you've got to find what works for you.
Yeah, for sure. And I think obviously I'd love to ride way more. I had a pretty good winter, I will say. I did manage to get about over 40 days on my skis, so I'm not complaining about that.
Oh, that's good, yeah.
At all. And
we
anybody
had
who
zero
knows,
snow on the East Coast over here, so at least in Canada.
Yeah, I heard it was pretty brutal. Anybody who knows what happened in the Pacific Northwest knows that apart from 1 or 2 exceptional days, the first 2.5 months of this year was pretty terrible.
Yeah.
Certainly there was lots of videos going out about Whistler, being under tremendous amounts of rain and the snow melting away and $300 lift tickets and 2-hour
I've seen those headlines.
Yeah. And what people didn't realize is from about Family Day onwards, from about mid-February through really till the resort closed a week and a bit ago, the spring season was phenomenal this year. They had huge amounts of snow. It's like powder almost every week. So really from like spring break onwards, the last 2 months were just excellent. And the crowds are gone as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I would admit, there were a few days where it's do a bunch of work for a couple hours in the morning and then go crack out 6 laps, answer some text messages in the gondola on a chairlift and then back at work, for another 4, 5, 6 hours, 7 hours, deal with my family in there as well. So I think those things, I'm fortunate that I can do that.
Yeah. But I think, obviously it depends on different circumstances and whatnot. And the listeners of the show, it's a wide range of profiles in terms of what they do and how their schedules are set up. But I think we underestimate, especially, now with there still is a lot of work from home kind of scenarios and whatnot. We underestimate what we can do with our schedule if we just ask. We might not have full autonomy. I mean, I run my own business as well, but even at that, as you know, like in some cases, it could become harder because it's you and you and the team. But it's my wife and I have had this conversation. Like we didn't sign up for this journey, which, as you know, can be quite stressful at times, to not at least take advantage of some of these scheduling things. I don't live, I'm in the Blue Mountains, so I'm always wary to say anything about mountains on the East Coast when I'm speaking to someone that's in the Rockies. But, the thing over here, at least, is, I'm 9 minutes away from the hills. So, can go do a couple laps, for an hour and literally be back and kind of get back into the swing of things quite easily.
Yes.
And like, that's for me at least, some of the magic of splitting up the day. And I wrote a book that was very much influenced by trying to get my mind into a flow state, and come back from either a ride or snowboard or something and hammer out a few chapters. But there are other ways to do that as well. Like, could be, quick, 10-minute walk after lunch, or some breath work, or whatever, right? It's just to think about these things.
Yeah, I'd say it's funny you mentioned the breath work in particular. So one thing that I personally started 25 years ago now,
okay,
which I've been doing weekly, is Pilates.
Okay.
And, people, there's obviously a lot of knowledge in yoga. Pilates is a little more new school, but it's been around for close to 100 years now. But I've been very diligent about that, and it's been super positive. And I just set apart the time of the day every week, same time, same day. And during COVID, there's a bunch of online Pilates sessions there. But it is really important, and I feel bad if I miss it. Not mentally, like physically, I feel bad if I miss it, and I always feel great after doing it. And I think, like, all these things are going to the gym. Same thing. I don't say I love the gym environment. It's certainly not my preferred place to be.
Yeah.
But I'm always happy when I've been there and left, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
And and same with bike rides. And one of the reasons when we brought out our gravel bike, people were really surprised, because we had this reputation for kind of hardcore mountain bikes, which, we try not to say we're hardcore. We try to make bikes that work really well in all situations, not bikes that just work in any, situations to manage that. But when we brought out gravel bikes, people were like, oh my gosh, like, Knolly gravel bike. But these bikes are fantastic products, and they may be actually, like, of all the products we released, the products that we got it as close to perfect at the start as of any product. That makes sense.
Wow.
Like, we had a design idea, and it became as close to perfect as it could. So we brought that out, and sometimes it is just that. It's like, get on this bike and go for an hour. And the beauty of the gravel bike is you can go right from your house.
Yeah.
You don't need to get to a trailhead or find somewhere or drive 5 or 10 or 30 minutes. You can, like, literally go out the door and start riding. Of course, you can go to destinations as well to ride.
Yeah.
But
from my understanding, you guys, the majority of your products come from a need from the team, right? Like, it's from my understanding on the gravel bike situation, it was most of the team was riding into work or the office and kind of realized that, hey, we could probably do something better in this space, which it sounds like that's how the original mountain bikes for Knolly originated as well. Like, there's got to be a better way to create something.
Yeah, on the gravel side, it wasn't so much commuting focused. It was just I had a background in road riding a little bit when I was in my 20s, and I've always enjoyed it, even though we're known for particular more aggressive mountain bikes. But it was just something when we started looking into this about maybe 6-7 years ago. When I looked around the office composition, there was a large group of people, like probably not all of our staff rides, but maybe 3/4 of them do.
Okay.
And when I looked at those people that ride, well over half, if not another 3/4, had bikes in this market segment of some type.
Okay.
And in particular, we have a couple employees who have put tremendous mileage on their gravel bikes in terms of bike packing, and they actually probably have the largest knowledge base of anybody in the company. And it's a funny product for us because we really underservice it from a marketing standpoint. But it's been getting such a great reputation, word of mouth, that when we have them in stock, they sell. And we have to really keep an eye on inventory because we find ourselves out of stock on them quite frequently. And in particular, over the last couple of years, where procurement was really challenging, just with vendor delays and all and shipping delays and everything. That product's actually been one of the most difficult to manage, just because we offer in a wide range of sizes, and always having the right size in stock is a real challenge for that product. But having the right the size tailored correctly also is one of the reasons why the performance is so high, because it fits really good. So we have a lot of options for fit on the product.
Mm.
But I love it, actually. I think it's just it's social when you're riding with people, and you can go and crank out a 2-hour ride or a 3-hour ride, and you can cover some really good distance and see some cool stuff and chat. And certainly when you get these bikes off road, they can be just as technical as a mountain bike. Yeah, you don't have big drops, and you don't maybe have some of the steep descents, but you have zero suspension. You can turn a gravel ride into a fairly technical, ultra high consequence, but you can certainly move it away from zero consequence pretty easily.
Sure.
And in certain types of ride, not all terrain, some terrains, very safe. Not like we're emphasizing extreme gravel or anything like that, but certainly the bikes can be tailored to a lot of different build styles and be adaptable to a lot of different types of terrain.
Yeah. There's a lot of gravel bike riders out here, and I haven't really dabbled in that, and it's probably the in between that I need, because I have road bike tires still scare the shit out of me. They feel like suicide bikes in a way. They're just coming from, as you know, a giant mountain bike tire, and then you're like, okay, this is this going to hold up on the road? So I feel like a gravel bike is a nice transition there, and there's a lot of, at least around here, there's a lot of really good trails for that as well. I do want to ask you about just, and this might be coming back to the earlier days of starting Knolly, and maybe now to this day as well, but just what it takes mentally, or if there was any fear around like competing against the big brands. Because you've really built a beautiful reputation. I mean, of course, I'm sure there's always more to do and whatnot, but it's not like it's a no-name brand. And there are some pretty significant brands out there, and especially in the West Coast. So how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question, because up until maybe 3 years ago, we were trying to compete directly with them, which honestly was a fool's errand, because we're just frankly not capitalized the way we need to be to do that.
Yeah.
And there are companies that have come in and there's some, I'm not a guy that's kind of going to name brands.
Yeah, sure.
Either torpedo them or throw them under the bus or talk about how great they may be. There's some really great brands in the industry, but there's certainly every small to medium-sized brand, or a lot of small to medium-sized brands, are trying to be one of the market leader big brands. And there's a couple in particular, depending on, what you feel is important. So about 3 years ago, I kind of realized, like, this is ridiculous to be trying to do this, and let's focus on our strengths. And part of that was like the realization that the market had started to become extremely homogenous in terms of what people were trying to do. And we see that even very recently, like there's been some new bike releases where it's all about how this certain feature or this feature or this feature, because someone brought it out and that's now the cool thing to have. And invariably that stuff goes in cycles.
Sure.
This was super cool. And then the guys that are the market leaders will move past it at some point. They'll be like, hey, here's our new thing, So not trying to keep up with that and really be at what would ultimately be at the back end, if you're trying to compete with that. Feature creep style of, you got to have the new this or the new this. We've stayed away from that. And in fact, we've done the opposite. We doubled down on the things we're strong at. And one of those is we decide we're going to be an all metal bike company. So, and I'm from my background in physics and engineering physics, I'm what I would call myself, I'd say I'm material agnostic. And the four most common materials used in the bike industry are carbon fiber, aluminum, steel, and titanium. And we make all of our aluminum, or all of our full suspension mountain bikes are very high-end aluminum bikes. We feel that's the best material for the job in that application. And our rigid bikes, or gravel bikes, and our hardtail mountain bikes are made from steel and titanium because they have the best feel for those types of products.
Yeah.
There's a big difference in cost. Titanium frames will 3 times the cost of the steel frame. So kind of learning our market segment and not trying to do what everybody else is trying to do was probably the first part of that. The second thing that happened recently after, trying to say, okay, we're not trying to be like everybody else and try to do our own thing, is really understanding the business we're in. And for the first dozen years, it was like, let's build cool bikes and people will buy them. And why are we not growing the way we want to grow? And all these challenges. And what are, and especially coming from a technical background or an engineering style background, what I had to really realize is that we're in the fashion industry first.
Oh, interesting.
Which is interesting. And no one wants to admit it because every bike brand is like, oh, our carbon fiber is super unique. And, our suspension design is the most efficient. It's going uphill and the best at going downhill. There's all sorts of chest thumping and pounding and about why we're better and our engineers are smarter and our manufacturing techniques are the best and everybody else is terrible. And a lot of bravado on the marketing side. And really what it came down to, honestly, is people want the product to look good. And we'd had very polarizing designs, functionally at the top of the market, but aesthetically polarizing. Okay. And understanding that we could make designs that are still true to our roots and true to our technology, but increase the visual appeal was a really big change. And that's just something that's happened recently in the last couple of years. And it's been really well received, like better than I ever anticipated it would be. So
yeah, the bikes look great.
Yeah,
but it strikes. I feel like there's a theme to the conversation developing around balance, and just because there was what we talked about around the tough times during COVID of, I guess the language you could use like working in the business versus on the business, and the balance of that. And then same thing here. I mean, you technically, in quality wise, you can make the best bike, but if it doesn't look great, that's just a reality of what we're seeing in the market, right? It's balancing that out. Not an easy feat. You've got to be pretty level-headed and then also not following the features. I saw this when was my background as I co-founded a health tech app, and we used to use the same language, feature creep, because it was easy. You'd get all this stuff coming in from users and whatnot. Can you add this? Can you do this? Next thing you know, you have this giant, basically app or tech offering that is just loaded full of everything, and you're not, super good at one thing or a couple good things. Like it dilutes the whole, experience, right? Which sounds like you're also watching for that as well.
Yeah, I think we realize that we need to be a different business than the biggest brands, and some of the biggest brands, not all of them. There's very different. There's people at top 5-6 companies. A couple of them have very similar business models, and some are different. But there's just no way to compete with those guys. We're not positioned, and we're not trying to. So understanding where we're strong and understanding where we're not strong, and I guess that's the classic so-called SWOT analysis.
Exactly.
But understand where we can excel and building our relationships with our vendors so they understand that, and our customers, whether they're end user customers or resellers. And then also trying to figure out one thing I think that was really important for me to learn is just how important marketing is for a business. So especially being a technical person by background. When I worked at previous companies, we were never a fan of the marketing people because we're like, we're doing all the hard work and they're out there playing golf and got luncheons and that's so unfair. But then when you own a business, you realize how powerful marketing is, at least the right marketing. Marketing is one of those things where, they always joke, you don't know which part of your marketing is producing results and which part isn't. But certainly having some understanding that it is an extremely powerful force. And when you're small, I guess your budgets are constrained and your resource limit on that, how do you maximize that? And I'd say we're finding that out these days. It's certainly during the height of COVID when everybody's making tons of money, it was just throwing money left, right, and center. Now it's lean times and people have got to be very strategic where those marketing resources go. So it's
yeah.
What
I'm gonna start wrapping up, Noel, but what makes you smile each day? Like what's lighting you up about what you do and what you get to do and kind of everything in between?
Yeah, I think, there's a few different answers there. So purely on the product side, which is, the easiest one to go to, I think it's whenever we release a new product, whether it's the prototyping stage where I get the first look at it or first ride on it and it does what I want it to do or it does close to what I want it to, then obviously there's some immense technical and engineering and design and manufacturing satisfaction because that process is usually at least a couple-year process to get to that point.
Okay.
So when you get to that point, there's a lot of money's been spent, a lot of time and effort's been spent. So the engineering person in me, that's obviously the first stage of satisfaction.
Yeah. Well, and that's got to go right back to how even before Knolly, just you creating bikes in the garage or wherever you were doing it.
Yeah.
From the sheer excitement or from a place of curiosity to see, can you make something that's better?
Yeah. And I think, better is a very broad statement because better means different things to different people. Some companies are 100% value focused. So having a product that's pretty good for an exceptional price is the best product for them.
Okay.
And I think the other thing is with bikes is people talk about performance, but what is performance? What does performance really mean? And it's a bit, I always use the analogy of speaker design. So if you read like these speaker journals or audiophile type journals, people talk about, it's got linear response, but it feels warm or it feels harsh or it feels cold. And these are all, almost like ergonomic type things that are very different from the science behind it. You can plot a graph of the frequency response. You could, we can look at the kinematics through CAD software in a bike and say, the relationship of suspension progression to chain tension is X, Y, or Z, or whatever it happens to be, or the center of mass maps up to here, and these different things. But when you get on a bike, it has to feel right.
Yeah.
And that is a very different thing. And I think, from a product standpoint, satisfaction wise, it's when you get on something and it feels how you expect it to feel. That's very, very, very satisfying. And then obviously I'm a bit preaching to the choir when I get on something. It's then when we start to get that through the staff, they're usually the first people to get on any pre-production bikes and maybe a few outside, athletes that we use and to get their feedback and, hey, you guys are on the right path. And this is, I prefer the direction you've gone versus the previous generation of product. And then ultimately that works all the way through the reseller base and to end user customer. From a product perspective, from a business perspective, it's when my staff are really humming and everybody's working together. Yeah. That's been super challenging over COVID for the reasons we talked about, approximately 15 minutes ago. But it feels like we've kind of gotten back into that phase now where everybody's working together and people aren't siloed and there's lots of information sharing going on and everybody's kind of, steering the ship or rowing in the same direction. So from a business perspective, those are the things. Obviously, I've got a family now and you see kids on their bikes or kids skiing, we're not a ski company, but when you get the joy out of that as well and say, hey, there's there's a young person on something I created that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I resonate with that. So I have two boys, an 8-year-old and a 2-year-old, and the 2-year-old's on a balance bike right now. And he's at this point where he's lifting the legs up like naturally. Right.
Yes.
And just, I'm like, oh, it's as someone that obviously enjoys mountain biking, like I can see it. And he has a bike. He's just, he needs to grow a little bit bigger to be able to, to fit it. But I can already see like he's going to go right from there to like no training wheels or anything like that. Just let him go. And it's just so satisfying to see that evolution, especially with kids, right? To see them
For sure.
In these kind of sports and their happiness, right?
Yeah.
That's excitement.
Yeah. And I'd say, there's no rush. And I think I made the same thing with my son, where a lot of his friends were riding pedal bikes and he still wanted to be on his run bike.
Yeah.
And I'm like, get on the pedal bike. And he was just having fun on the run bike. And I think as the adults, we want to see them progress, but they'll progress on their own.
Yeah.
They can chase their Olympic dreams in their teenage years if they want to. And
Totally.
early adult years. They don't need to be chasing it at 3, 4, 5 years old.
Yeah.
They just need to be having fun at their pace.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is, I think as adults, there's a lot we can take from that as well. Getting back to making sure that we're also having fun and not being too damn serious about everything, and bringing back that childlike, play and curiosity and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's tough when you've got a business you're running or you're working and you've got kids, and kids are so demanding. Just in terms of the highs are high and the lows are low.
Exactly.
Kids. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, no, this was fun. I want to thank you for making time to come on the show, but a higher thank you for just following your passion and your intuition, and navigating your ways through what I imagine many ups and downs, having been running this business for quite some time. I mean, the stats. There's a pretty high failure rate for any brand new business, and you guys have been out there. I feel the brand on the trails, definitely in the bike shops. And there's just this sense of, and I feel it through this conversation as well, that you really, really live and breathe the values of what started Knolly in the first place. And I think that's something beautiful to celebrate, as well as someone that thought up of the idea and has kind of led the team to keep that brand alive and the vision going and just doing your best and having fun along the way.
Yeah, thank you. I think we do. And like I said, it's been a learning process, and we've definitely made mistakes along the way. Like, I think it would be disingenuous to say that we haven't. It's always been perfect. And it's certainly, even for me personally, it's been a huge growth path. And I think our direction for the now is just moving forwards and try to allow the staff to grow and the business to grow, and hopefully put the craziness, honestly, the last 4.5 years of COVID behind us, and look forward to kind of owning our space and not worrying too much about what all these other companies are doing, and just trying to be true to our roots. And we know there's a market for a product, and that's certainly the biggest challenge we really had is not being able to serve that market to the level we wanted to, honestly. Yeah. So I feel like we're not done developing new products, but we definitely, our core product ranges is by far the best it's ever been at this point. Now,
exciting times ahead.
Awesome.
Strap in and go.
Yeah, hopefully, right?